I've been a user on YouTube for a very long time, a lurker, as it would be said in a lot of other contexts. And I've been a content creator before, and I'm fairly recently a new content creator again. And ever since the olden days, I remember when Google first took YouTube, and there were changes, and some of them were quite unsettling. Even back then, when the expected feature set was different than we have in today's social media and media platforms. And so I didn't quite pay too much attention until more and more drama started cropping up regarding the changes that Google was making. And I started specifically keeping track at one point of various sweeping changes that um, now Alphabet Incorporated and Google have made to the YouTube platform. And the most recent one just came to my attention. And I know it's a few days old, but I still want to go through it. And it's an article from The Verge. And I'm going to omit my opinions of The Verge, and I don't know anything about this author. I don't actually care. There are some sources that are here, which is quite nice to have, but I want to talk about the topic that they're going through, and that is the fact that YouTube is making um, policy changes that are going to now influence a greater audience, including an audience that more or less made the platform. And I know that original YouTube was popular. So streaming in general is pretty new and is pretty intensive on resources. And back then, video hosting in any form was really impossible. And Google decided to go into debt, and they may still be in debt to make this possible. And so I appreciate that they've had to make changes since then, but I do know where they came from and what kinds of stuff they that made them popular in the first place. Actually, there was some intellectualism that made it popular in my mind, but there's always been, the joke is cat videos, but it's also been gaming videos, things like let's plays as well as reviews and stuff like that. And this is directly in this change in policy is going to directly influence the let's say the most gentle, most appropriate content creator for the platform. And so it kind of worries me. And unlike all of the other changes that I've been looking at, this in particular seems very worrying. Probably the most that I've seen. I mean, I could understand things like, oh, there is and there would be a significant amount of pearl clutching, hand wringing, etc. And although wrong, there were reasonable justifications behind it, but now I don't think there is. So I'm going to read through this article just to see, maybe I'm wrong, and to see if there's anything interesting in this article that I can comment on. So on Wednesday, the Federal Trade Commission fined YouTube. Okay, so one of the things that businesses do is they will take notice as soon as there is uh, a pressure put on them that has lasting long-term consequences. So a one-off fine, they'll look at it in a future in the context of the future, and if it's a one-off and they made X amount of money and there's a one-off amount of cost, it'll be something like the cost of doing business. Some will make significant long-term decisions, which is they're making a huge amount of money and there's a recurring fine for not obeying a certain law, and they'll just keep doing it potentially for years, and then they'll just pay the fines. It's just a tax. And unless there is more of a push to make that threatening, if it's more than just a dollar amount, then they'll start making significant changes. They'll change direction. And so YouTube was fined, and it's fined a minor amount, and it's regarding ads, well, ads on content suited for children. And this is a little weird because I've been told that if you want, as a YouTube creator, to have success, then you would need to have content that's appropriate. Well, family friendly is the term that's being used. And that deeply offends me because I don't go to YouTube for that content. I don't want to go to YouTube to make that content only. I want to go to YouTube, the you part of YouTube, as myself, and I want to be able to consume all kinds of content, and for that to sustain the careers of the people that I'm watching. I don't necessarily want to be restricted to only family friendly content, and I in turn don't want to be restricted into creating just that content. I actually really like the idea of creating family friendly content for me, just because I've been exploring a more paternal kind of personality. I guess I'm getting old. Maybe I'm like that. We hear all these stories about, it's just kind of built into us to have family and have children and stuff like that. And maybe it's true. Even if it weren't true for me, it's still something interesting to experience, to feel. And so I kind of like the idea that, I'll read more children's books and stuff like that. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with being nice, and I'm fine with all this kind of stuff is great, and it's monetizable, but it's not the audience. That's not appropriate for all audiences. It sounds weird. You can have adult material not appropriate for children, and you can have material made for children that's not appropriate for adults. And there's a spectrum in there, but that's really confusing. But it's a pretty obvious thing that a lot of adults simply will not watch makeup tutorials. And they can be as interesting as you want, but sooner or later that market's just not going to be interesting enough. And so YouTube is eating itself. It's consuming itself. So right now what they're doing is they're reacting to a fine, and it doesn't matter if you agree with that or not. It doesn't matter if they agree with it or not. They get a fine for doing a thing. They're going to change their policies because now they're afraid of advertisements targeting children. This is very much the same as smoking being removed from movies, because if it's a movie that children would see, it's a product being advertised to them, the product is unhealthy for children, and the people will draw the links. And again, whether or not it's actually true doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's enough of something, a seed under there, to make it the thing, well, to actually have impact. And so YouTube is being impacted in this way too. Okay, so relatively small, roughly 1% of its annual revenue. That's a terrifyingly large amount. I normally would have just hand waved 170 million and said that's cost of doing business. It's a one-off thing, but the problem is that's going to be a recurring payment, and that is enough of one that stockholders are going to have a fit. Okay, so their reaction is just going to be to overreact. But it comes with strict conditions. Okay, so Google is handing down essentially that cost down to its creators. Part of the settlement, YouTube must stop collecting data on videos that are targeted towards children. Okay, so this is a data protection issue. Okay, defined by the FTC. Okay, so this is in the United States only. So the FTC is an American body. YouTubers who create videos for children. Who is that? What videos? Define that. Hey, YouTube, define anything about anything. This is a big problem that a lot of people have is I like rules. I like rules because now I know what to do. I know the difference between right and wrong in the context of the laws, the so-called laws for a platform I'm using. I want to respect somebody's house, essentially. I want to know what to do and what to not do. I want to learn. And if I want to take it seriously, like respecting where I am seriously, I I need to know. And a lot of YouTube policies are there's one policy which goes, we have rules, but only we know them. We don't want to tell you that because then you might find a way around the rules. Like, what? If I don't know the rules, I can't do the right thing. I can't know that. I was recently learning about how foreigners, as a blanket concept, get arrested in Japan and how the legal system works from a Japanese lawyer. And he was talking about very, very strange ideas that exist in Japanese law that would utterly ruin just a random person. Now, the examples being given of the crimes being committed by those, let's call it a vacationer. The example crimes are things that I think are pretty universal, like don't steal, don't start fights, don't damage property, this kind of stuff. So I personally think it's quite reasonable, but the response that the Japanese legal system has is absolutely, it's baffling. It's just baffling. So it's important if you're going to that country, because that's a very popular country for a lot of people to visit, because it's like it's mono-ethnic and it's old and it's pretty consistent, and all the cultures that touch Japan become Japanified in some way or other. And so it's kind of like, it's fascinating to go to have this. It's weird. It's like an authenticity. So you can go to a McDonald's in Japan. It's not like a McDonald's. It's a Japanese McDonald's. It's a different experience. And the same thing is with the rules. You go there, you understand their version of the rules so that you can fit in, so you can really enjoy yourself and not make, even if it's just embarrassing mistakes like blowing your nose, which is very rude. And so content creators that come on YouTube ought to be able to, it's okay to have a minefield of rules. It's okay to do that as long as they're there and you have some forgiveness. 3 strikes you're out, it's not good enough. It's 3 strikes you're out within a certain period of time, and then just help the slate get a little clean over time. People will make a bunch of fumbling mistakes, even if they're malicious and it's on purpose. Just let it happen. That's the price you pay, and let there be like a very minimal undercurrent of, let's just call it evil, right? So abuse of rules. Okay, well, but what that does is that lets everybody who is in that mire rise above it, because they understand what's going on. They break rules, they make mistakes. So like, okay, well, I guess I can't throw a rock through a window. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. And then they grow and they grow and they know everything, and then they'll stop doing it, because they'll find successes. They'll find that if they stop doing certain kinds of content, they'll get more monetized, they'll get more views, they'll get a better audience. You want to know what the rules are. And YouTube not defining concepts like what is X friendly to Y is a really big problem. Right? So YouTubers who create videos for children, like unboxing toys or nursery rhymes, these are just examples. Nursery rhymes, really? I never thought about reading nursery rhymes. must also clearly label their content as being intended for kids. I'm a creator myself. This video is part of it. I've looked through the settings. I'll have to look through again to see if there's actually some sort of flag that says, hi, this is intended for children. Because the only one that I've seen is, hi, this is not intended for children, or this contains, I can't remember what the phrase is. I'm not going to look it up in the middle of a stream, but and you can flag something as being not suitable for children, which I don't like that, because it's not exactly a spectrum. It's not exactly, it's kind of gray. I'll give an example of 1980s movies. These are 1980s movies that are made for kids, but nowadays would be horrifying. And they wouldn't pass for being for children. And that's because reasons, right? And so if I were to take content which in a time machine would be suitable for kids of that era, that content wouldn't fly now. And part of the problem with doing that, like, I understand that things change. Okay, I'm fine with that. And again, not quite understanding how, and right, so I'm going to start getting that generation gap where I don't really understand why talking about certain things would be inappropriate for kids. So that, and that's why there needs to be some forgiveness so that I can actually learn. But we go back even further. I've been reading not nursery rhymes, but I've been reading fairy tales. And fairy tales are brutal and gruesome and confusing. They don't necessarily have any kind of morality tale, which is part of a justification for there being something that, I mean, like, it's awful, but it tells a tale that's important for reasons. Therefore, something kids can listen to it. No, it's just gruesome stuff. And there will be a time when that's perfectly fine for kids. That's normal. In fact, that might be part of kid-friendly literature. But if I read it now, I have to flag it. But that's not the same as cursing, is it? That's certainly not the same as reviewing war or something like that, which isn't actually being flagged, and it should be, because certain people are just above those rules. They've got their own different set. If you're a big news channel, why wouldn't such a channel have to flag their stuff when it's actually showing graphic violence? Right? A riot is still violence, and that's not appropriate for children, yet fairy tales not appropriate for children in the same way. So in the same way, how do you define what's on the positive side, what is suitable for children, right? So me pulling apart a toy, is that suitable for children? I don't know. It's violence, kind of, isn't it? Is it appropriate? It's not me using it. It's not me talking about it. Even then, it's too gray. It's too difficult. So this doesn't make any sense at all. And it would require a human for every single complaint, which can't happen. It's not they're poor, or they're claiming to be poor, so they don't want to do it because it's a money thing. No, it just can't. It's not possible. Not technically possible. And don't think that an artificial intelligence can control through the audio of these videos and make a judgment call. That hasn't worked out. That never will. That's never going to replace humans. Okay. So for anyone making those videos, the changes will be significant. Features like comments and notifications won't be available on videos. So this is the kind of semi-hidden state, the punishment that YouTube puts down on semi-arbitrarily on either creators or videos that they don't like. I don't fully understand it. Nobody does. And it's kind of, again, you can't get a hold of a human even if you have 100,000 subscribers. So this is always going to be a problem. So they have an emphasis on kids' characters. I mean, kids' characters could be used in an adult context. And there's some kids shows that, I mean, there are cartoons that are not suitable for children. And again, these are leftovers from styles from the 1980s that were for children, but nowadays are kind of for the nostalgia of people that used to be children during that time. Okay, so we don't know what that is. It's also likely these videos will not be able to run targeted ads, which could affect monetization. Well, not being able to run targeted ads does affect monetization. Okay, comments and notifications. So every kind of activity that is on a video has a certain kind of influence, and people have talked about, so because I've been paying attention to YouTube algorithm related stuff, videos that are monetized are recommended more because YouTube makes more money the more views are there, and so they make more ad revenue the more eyeballs are on a video. So there's this loop that has been demonstrated as true, where people that get a video monetized will have more views on those videos, and videos that have more voting related activity, and there's some arguments that say it doesn't matter if it's plus or minus or anything like that. In fact, just the more volume, and maybe there's a ratio there of number of views versus number of votes, that shows interest in the thing. Not agreement or disagreement or anything like that, but it shows tension, which is eyeballs. There's there's all kinds of stuff like how much of the video is being watched all in one sitting. But comments are very important as well, because it is information. And when comments and votes are removed, then there's a really serious problem there. Because those videos simply are not going to be, well, they're not going to be made popular by YouTube on purpose. So, okay, no targeted ads. So that means that all of these kids stuff related, all these kids related videos, I mean, who knows? Could be kids' toys unboxing. They're going to have direct sponsorship, which is very difficult for a lot of people. They're going to have Patreon accounts or something like that, direct donations, which is probably not going to happen for a lot of these random things, because often popularity of a lot of these kids related stuff is just somebody dropping by, checking out a couple of things and leaving, not necessarily dropping by, deciding that it's for a cause or something, and then donating, and then monthly checking in and making, it's not them supporting a person, it's them being interested in a topic or a particular item. So monetization is just not going to work the same way it would work with what we would call an intermediate content. So not adult, but for grown-ups. These two product features might not seem like a big deal to viewers, but they could be catastrophic for creators, you think? If channels can't send notifications for certain videos, yeah, if they can't send notifications, they're just dead. Fewer people will watch those videos, you think, within the first crucial hours. And I don't know, I don't fully understand this view stuff, but people have shown me their monetization graphs, and I see that there is the initial spike in the first X amount of time. And one of the problems that has been talked about is a video is posted unlisted and it gets demonetized instantly. And then there's this concern about if you can post it publicly, publish it, and then put it into a review process for it to be manually reviewed and then have monetization turned on. But the damage is horrific. So you either have YouTube turning it off, or you have somebody else doing a content claim, and then you have to go through the process of proving them to be liars. But it might take a couple of days. And if it takes a couple of days, you look at the revenue graphs for their videos, and the revenue is at its highest in the beginning days, even hours, and then it just drops like a rock, and then it enters into something called evergreen content, where it's basically a flat revenue that is generated based on the backlog, the back catalog. So it might be 4 days old, and now it's just like any other video for them in terms of monetization. So there's really terrible damage that can be done, and there's targeted damage that has been done for specific videos, for specific creators. And if YouTube just makes another policy like this that influences the first critical moments of a video, that's going to how much could that influence? See, all the stuff that I've seen is with the first 2 days of video stuff. I'm not sure what the difference of a couple of hours would be, but it would probably represent like a good 10% income, something. I mean, that's just a blind guess. This could lead to YouTube recommending fewer videos from that creator because people are less engaged. Well, of course not. Of course they're not engaged. The videos aren't recommended as much, fewer views, less money. Of course, it's just going to be a terrible loop, and these channels are going to die because if people aren't going to be notified, they're just going to go and watch the things they are being notified for. They'll forget about a channel. If it's not a high intellectual channel, which is what YouTube was really founded on. It's founded on fluff entertainment and intellect. And you could say something like some is for kids and some is for adults, but that's not true. I love cat videos, and you can say they're childish, and they are, but they're not necessarily for children. I want to unwind. I want to laugh a little bit. I want to see somebody's pet parakeet being smart. I want to see all that kind of stuff. And I'm usually an adult, and I want to see high intellectual stuff. I might want to see news commentary. Might want to hear about different complex philosophical topics. I might want to learn about history, all this kind of stuff. But that's also true for somebody who's young. When I was 14, I would absolutely just consume anything to do with really difficult, like I would love Warcraft related stuff. So I'd love hearing about soldiery and about battles in history and stuff like that. And were it around back then, I would have just sat on YouTube all day and just watched videos about people talking about those kinds of issues, and I would have gotten into martial arts related stuff and how swordplay actually works and battle tactics. And those are adult, aren't they? There's violence and stuff in there, isn't there? But okay, so these changes won't be easy for creators. Yeah, so this is the blanket, we don't care if it's hard or not. These changes will have a significant business impact on family and kids creators. So they know when they're doing it on purpose. They know they're doing it on purpose, and they're probably going to hide behind, oh, we have to because of these law changes. It's not our fault. It's true, though. She said in the post, adding, this won't be easy for some creators and are committed to working with them through this transition. No, they're not, because they don't even assign a human. They're supposed to have a human available for a creator with 100,000 subscribers, which is not nothing. I mean, these days, YouTube is just disrespectful to them. They give form letters when there are these creators who are being assaulted by loopholes in the system. However many haters will go and flag down a video, and their entire channel will get demonetized, and they have to work with YouTube, but they can't contact their associate. And so even though they might, I had one guy who was talking about how he was making a fine living with YouTube. And so he could actually give a dollar value because of the split that he knew of. He could give a dollar value that was being given to YouTube. and he had some problems with his channel, and he like this monetization and that monetization, and he would look at his numbers and he would say, okay, well, this is the amount of money that YouTube is denying itself access to because it's denying it from me, so they're not getting their cut. And well, and he couldn't get to the like 3 times. He was saying just 3 times a year he'd contact his rep, and he couldn't. He's like, okay, well, I'm paying enough for a whole salary, and I need a couple of hours a year, and I can't get that because he was just getting form letters and I don't know what this kind of stuff. And so there's something that's just really really weird happening behind the scenes where it's like YouTube is even refusing to make money for some reason. Like maybe they don't have access to quality humans to actually be representatives. Maybe, who knows? We can't know that because Google, oh, keep saying Google. I'll just call it YouTube. YouTube is opaque. And so they're not committed to working with them. They're never going to talk to their creators. They're going to talk to the select however many. And even then, I've heard the most popular creators say they've had problems talking with YouTube. Creators are coming to terms with exactly how hard it could be. No, they haven't even come close. Forrest, a gaming YouTuber with over 750,000 subscribers, said the changes are scary for him. Of course they are. And the problem is a lot of these are something like small businesses or entrepreneurs. They're self-employed, and for a lot of these people, it's their first time being self-employed. And if things were consistent and could be understood, things could be planned for. But no. And everything keeps changing, and stuff that used to be okay stopped being okay, and it just happens so quickly, and it ruins people. So a lot of people are saying, well, YouTube is just a side thing, or a part-time thing, and they're diversifying. Diversifying is really, really important. So he is rightly concerned. He's trying to figure out if his content would even be affected. Yeah, it would be. What about Let's Plays, tutorials, gameplay compilations? So, for example, I have done and should continue to do Let's Plays of a game called Okami. It is an old game for the PlayStation 2. It is suitable for teens. It has violence. It has references to alcohol. And so, I mean, you can say 14, fine. I'm fine with that. I'm an adult. I love it. I just love it so much. But can I monetize that? I should. While playing, unlike a lot of people doing their Let's Plays, while I play the game, I'm talking about the game. I'm not just using it as a backdrop, as some sort of filler, and then I'm talking to people on, in the live stream, in chat, or anything like that. And maybe that's going to change. But that content is for children. It's compatible with children. Gameplay compilations, are they? Who knows what's targeted for children? What's the difference between family friendly and kid targeted? We don't know. YouTube doesn't know. YouTube is basically making the laws fuzzy, and now they have a weapon to apply that selectively, so they can target people now. And even if you think they're not doing that or can't do that, you're wrong. They can, and they can do it quietly and just say, well, when you have too many laws and not enough law enforcement, it has to be selective, and it might not be selective based on efficacy. It might be selective based on somebody's ideology, and it's a problem. Everyone is expecting uphill battle. Yeah. So YouTube is just pointing to the blog when they're asking for comments. So, and that's fine. I'd expect that. kind of like they're killing video game content. Well, we've seen all that before. Top 3 games are Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox. And they're non-violent. No, they're not non-violent. And child-centric games. No, they're not. Especially Roblox. Now, I'm not too familiar with Roblox, so I can't comment on that. Now, if we can't make videos on more mature video games because they'll get demonetized, but if we make videos on child-friendly games, they're now also going to get demonetized. Where is the middle ground, basically? Right? Like, you can say adult content includes military type video games where there is realistic blood, where there are guns. You can call that adult. I mean, we can have a discussion as to whether or not that's true. But if the rules are that for whatever reason that has to be omitted from monetization, at least I know I can work with that. And if you want to say that Minecraft is in the list of officially recognized and banned videos for monetization, okay, I can work with that. I don't agree with that, right? So philosophically, that's wrong. But is there a middle ground now? Everybody's going to be like kind of it's just too difficult. Boris is just one of the many creators who is already thinking about possibly switching focus over to YouTube competitors like Twitch or Mixer. Now, I'm not too familiar with Mixer, so that's Microsoft, and Twitch is an indie platform. Twitch is a little broken in the head as well because they're pretty selective about applying their rules. So the problem is YouTube was there not exactly first, but more or less first. So a lot of people have their name because of YouTube, and migrating users to another platform is extremely difficult. And I've been paying attention to some authors who've been working on that for years now, and their YouTube following will always be larger. And there's nothing stopping these other platforms from also being influenced by those same laws, because after all, I mean, take a look, right? This is the FTC. Well, why would the FTC isn't just going to target YouTube? The FTC is targeting all businesses, in this case in the United States, which is going to include Mixer, it's going to include Twitch. Yeah, they've kept doing that. The CEO of Family Video Network, a company that works with family vloggers and family video. Okay, so she's worried about creators. Yeah. So I don't know, does the Family Video Network act as a union or anything like that? Because there's some murmur as to what YouTubers can actually do to understand, to have any kind of transparency over the rules at the very least. And I think the main problem with this is YouTubers aren't politically aware enough to have known that the FTC was even considering any of this in the first place. And if they had their ear to the ground somehow, like with a union would be aware of these things, they could have planned already for any of this, so that, I mean, the impact would still be terrible, but again, they could know the rules, they could plan for them, they could adjust, they can learn. There's no chance right now. I already knew this video would be incredibly long. Okay. People who I deal with at YouTube feel horrible. Who cares? That the creators are the ones who are going to be hurt by this. Of course they are. And if the creators are hurt, then YouTube is hurt. But YouTube has no choice because rules are rules. And if politics tells them to do certain things, that's what they'll do. If advertisers have certain demands, that'll change. They have no choice. It's not even an ethics thing. This is what happens when you have a company that is that's openly traded as well. So you end up making some really odd decisions, so that ethics is removed from the way the company operates. Now, she argues it's families and the children who watch those videos who will suffer. Fine. Think of the children. I hate that argument. If people stop making content that's intended for children, because they'll have to, because it's not monetizable. So what are they doing it for fun? The big channels, they're doing this for a living. So they have that audience and they want to keep them, which means they should keep making that kind of content for free, quote unquote, for free, because they want to also they want to keep who they have, and they want those people to be pushed over to their actually monetized videos. So they kind of still need to have child-friendly, unmonetized stuff that they create for free as a springboard to have a chance to have some of those eyeballs go over to their monetized stuff. Which is like, okay, well, you make family friendly content, but the only reason it's getting made is so that they can move over to family unfriendly content that's monetized, which is kind of that's really strange. Yeah, the landscape is going to change, but it's not going to stop children. Good. And hey, I mean, you have the equivalent of a fake ID for just using the internet now. So, like, a kid that is smart enough to quote unquote circumvent YouTube's check for whether or not they're an adult, I think that person is ready for at least the intermediary adult content like Minecraft videos. So instead of being served content that is geared toward them, that is safe for them, that's enriching for them, and that's fun for them, they're going to be watching what? They're going to be cheating, or they're going to watch stuff that's created for free, which is going to be lower content. Maybe they'll go back to books. I'm sure that a parent will help them, but YouTube is the new television, so. The irony is that many of the creators who will suffer the most got into family content because the system seemed to favor content that appealed to a younger audience. As I said, creators were clamoring to make more family-friendly content. Family vloggers, like the Ace family, saw a huge uptick in traffic and success for their family vlog series. Creators like Jake Paul started working with kids to try to appeal to a younger audience. And yes, more creators started playing games like Minecraft. Yeah. Isn't there a new version of Minecraft? Well, there's always a new version of everything. And the most successful people are either lucky or smart, and usually both. And so what all the smart people were doing is they were going to where the money is. And now that is being attacked. They're just going to move on to something else. All the people that were kind of like fumbling along, who found their success accidentally, they'll just be killed because they didn't get there because they're smart. They don't have the smart to go and do something else. Now they're just going to be, well, this doesn't work anymore. They're going to look at the other people that were doing the other competitors, and they're just going to mimic it, but they're going to mimic it, but not with the brilliance that those other people had. So they might be like the best, and then the smart people, maybe the smart people did it right, maybe they got better, maybe not. Those smart people will go off somewhere else. And then that successful, lucky person, they might just be hardworking but not smart. They'll crash. They'll crash and they'll try to like flounder and bring some of their success to something else, but they'll become a copycat. So they're going to be hit hard. What's left for people to advertise on? Now you can't advertise on content aimed at kids. I think we'll have to see what that actually means. They're already not monetizing a bunch of other content, and it's pretty selective. They're already not running ads on channels where people curse a lot. And there's actually phrases where if you use phrases or you use words, your entire video will be demonetized. And sometimes I was watching one guy, he did some experiments to see what was going on. He was getting stuff demonetized before it was even made public. It was unlisted and would get demonetized as unlisted. And the entire channel gets hit, which is really difficult. Channels where people talk about mental health issues. Videos about LGBTQ issues aren't advertiser friendly. What do people make? So there's, okay, this is going to be challenging. Okay. Let us pretend like there is a spectrum of people, and that there's a spectrum of, I'm going to call it maturity, and that at the one hand you have viewers who have to be in groups, and the other you have individuals and individual members of groups. But so on the one hand you have definitely kids and their parents, and you have a curation of content that happens from the parents, and you have maybe the parent is sitting with the child, which is, if they're really young, they do that, and none of the content that gets watched that the child consumes, none of it is just done blindly. The parents always watch everything first. Let's pretend that everything is really carefully curated. We can imagine that at one end, and at the other end, it's anything goes. It's beheading videos or something like that. It's like it's stuff that can be conveyed in that media format with absolutely no concept of morality even. Okay, looking in between, there somewhere in there is a kind of viewer who will, in the absence of the curation of either a parent, their peers, or any kind of community, they will be exploring things that they feel they can't go to their typical support network to learn about, to explore, maybe even to talk about. They'll go to these places, and they, it's part of their maturation, or it's part of their exploration. And if they want to talk about things like, if they want to go and watch a video about bullying in school, and that's a very different, and they don't want to go to anybody for curating that, and that's a really broad and really dangerous topic that will really deeply upset somebody who's first exposed to it. But as long as they persist with it, they'll figure out what's extreme, and they'll find like that one YouTuber who had experienced that, who kind of occasionally talks gently about the topic, and this kind of person will gravitate towards that. And so you want that content to exist, and you want that that independent youth to go and find that little bit of comfort, find the little sanctuaries, and they'll find content creators who really speak to them. And it's extremely important that those speakers have revenue, even if it's from other kinds of material. But I think it's important that those content creators have revenue from that material. So if it's a channel that talks about health in general, be it mental or whatever, be it any kind of psychology, be it sexuality, be it whatever, some of those topics are going to be, you're going to have the parental types, whether or not it's with their children, who are going to want to curate that material. But the problem is, those sorts are very explicitly not wanted by those people exploring those topics. Otherwise, they just go directly to those people as authorities. Hey, I'm being picked on at school because this and this and this. Somebody who's, I don't want to say interested, but somebody who is youthful and exploring those topics doesn't want to go to parental type figures. They just don't want to. There's a disconnect there. They want to go to people that are far away, and they want to remove judgment, and they want to remove consequences, and they want barriers of even anonymity. And they form a kind of empathy, a connection across time and space, because I mean videos are made in the past, and so they want that. And it's a very, very different way of consuming content to go that way rather than talk to these curating, overbearing parental types. So anyhow, yeah, I feel strongly about that. Creators are still trying to figure that out. They have until January, so this is January 2020, when the changes will start to go into effect to prepare for the absolute worst, according to Hunter. And they're hoping YouTube will be transparent with them about what's going on. Maybe a little bit with some of them. Hopefully these the people that are in the know will start telling the rest of us. All the creators The Verge spoke to said it feels eerily similar to some of the earliest adpocalypses, a term used within the community to refer to a giant wave of demonetization affecting different channels. There are several of them, and I've tracked them, and I've kept videos on them and why they happened and all this kind of stuff and their impact and how people have changed. And I mean, maybe I'll create a compilation explanation video, but I don't have the skill right now, but I've got all the source material. Much of that fear comes from a history of YouTube not being direct and upfront with YouTubers about what they should expect and who will be affected. As I said, according to commentator and creator, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name, I'm going to say Ian, of the popular channel Nerd City, which I've heard of, don't watch. There is a serious impact on the mental health of creators from a lack of transparency by YouTube. Well, that's a little bit childish, but okay, so before YouTube, before this internet thing, the idea of being a small business, of becoming an entrepreneur, there was a kind of person that would do that. And there would be certain kinds of cooperations that would happen. But there were personality types that pursued that. And there are massive stresses involved with putting your life savings on the line or having your life savings tied into a market you can't control. It's very different from working for I mean, back then you could talk about stable businesses and a stable market, but that's never really been a thing. Maybe in the 50s or something like that. I don't know. People have this rose-colored glasses looking back, and we all know that when you look back, you're kind of selective about what's good and even what's bad. But that sort of entrepreneur is not the same kind of human being that's been making videos and is a content creator for a living. And I think that the type of personality for a traditional, let's call it a brick and mortar entrepreneur, the type of personality that finds their success there is very, and it's important, this is important, that personality is very different from the creative sort that finds success on YouTube. Now, there are traditional entrepreneurs that come onto YouTube. There's a certain kind of smart entrepreneur who looks at that audience and sees an opportunity, and right, so there is the traditional entrepreneur on YouTube, but there are a lot of people who are just creative, and it might be accidental or it might be intelligent. You have brilliant creative people. They have a different kind of psychology. That kind of entrepreneur has a different kind of psychology than a traditional one. And those people, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, you can insult an artist's painting and really deeply hurt them. But if you do that with an entrepreneur who prints posters for a living or something like that, they'll just look at you, they'll shrug, and they'll point at the numbers. They'll look at a spreadsheet and a graph and go, joke's on you, this is making money. Whereas the other artist who might be in the same kind of situation where they would make one piece of art and maybe it would be successful, and you point that out and you go, like, the style of the way that you're drawing these cartoons with the eyes is just weird. And even though it's successful, you really hurt them. So there's it's not a frailty as such, but psychologically they're impacted by a lot of things in their small business very differently from other people. So if you give them a kind of environment, an employment environment that's unknowable, it will just brutalize them psychologically. And I think that's what's being talked about here, is impact on the mental health. This is on top of the problems that we've had with like bullying online. Content creators have talked, I pay attention to that as well. They've talked at length about the problems they've had with dealing with comments and this kind of stuff, as well as there's attacks with flagging campaigns and just abuse of the mechanics of YouTube. At any rate, so the mental health thing, really important to note. We work really hard on something, we don't know how it's going to be treated by the algorithm. So it's like they're being abused by something fundamental in the market, not even people, or if it will be monetized at all, and whether it's going to pay the bills. Yeah, right. So it's a different kind of personality type. Everybody knows if you can't pay the bills, you're going to be stressed. But there's a different kind of entrepreneur personality that can deal with that stress in different ways. It's a core stress of worrying about whether what you're doing is a complete waste of your time economically for that week. That makes people have emotional crises. They have actual breakdowns. It's pretty bad. YouTube is always protecting itself with the lack of transparency, but it's a terrible trade-off for the creator community. And it would drive a lot of people away if there was an alternative. Everybody knows YouTube is a de facto monopoly. More information will be given to creators. No, it won't. Never has in the past. As the company gears up to launch its product changes and policy updates. Now, I know some people involved who have been in legal negotiations in Germany with YouTube over some very specific problems, and they're problems because law is pretty different in the union in Europe and in Germany, and so they're leveling some things. And so I understand some of the background behind the pressure being put on YouTube for transparency. So maybe they'll do the minimum effort essentially because they want to protect themselves. Because as soon as the company brings out the laws, then people can examine the enforcement of those laws, and they can determine trends in the selection of the enforcement, because it has to be limited because there's limited resources. So Google should be making minimum profit. Well, it should be making negative profit because it makes no sense how this platform could exist. Should be minimum because of the incredible amount of infrastructure that has to exist and the costs behind the scene in order to enforce those rules evenly. And so YouTube really needs to be as opaque as possible, so that and somehow make it so that the crowd doesn't see how selective it has to be, and it's going to be. And there have been open statements of employees of Alphabet, Google, YouTube that talk about ideological application of rules to its users, and like this. And so they've been hiding, and it's a big problem. Not just YouTubers' careers on the line either. I don't think it'll just affect YouTube. It could affect the entire gaming industry. That requires an article. This is a paragraph. It'll affect which games are popular. Imagine if Fortnite wasn't monetizable on YouTube. Fortnite wouldn't be what it is. Ninja wouldn't really be a thing. Is he a thing on YouTube still? He doesn't stream on YouTube. This could have major ramifications across the entire gaming industry and not just gaming creators on YouTube. Imagine that. Okay. I'll spend more time in this article thinking about that. Imagine you're a game creator. Imagine you're a games journalist. And you want to have or talk about a product. For that effort to be as monetizable as possible, it would have to be shaped in such a way as to be something you can communicate, as well as be something that other people can talk about. So if you're creating a game and there is a choice in the matter, you would create a game that could create a buzz, that could have let's plays if your business is compatible with the idea again. And you would want something that journalists would be able to talk about. Because if you don't do that, let's say the extreme opposite would be if you're a game author, you create a game that is specifically not monetizable, can't be let's played, it can't be streamed, reviews can't be made of it, journalists can't make articles on it, and they cannot do that because they cannot make money. Guaranteed, they will not ever make money. So you can't have some random person commentating on an article, commentating on a game. Nobody makes money. Would you do that? If you had a choice, absolutely not. You would not do that. Games companies would make games that are more suited for, and again, if the rules were made obvious, that's absolutely what everybody would do. Journalists would go after those things first, and they would only peripherally go after any other content as a way of just rounding themselves out and playing pretend like they care about the rest of the non-monetizable industry. And they just want to grab those eyes. And like I said earlier, they want to grab all those eyes from a wider market and push them towards the things that are monetizable. And that's going to go right down to the development of games in the first place. Because a game's success depends on whether or not there can be buzz, whether or not there can be news, if people can talk about it. And if none of that is monetizable, then it's just going to be volunteers doing it, which is it's certainly going to be possible for games to have success because a lot of everyday people will love games and will work for free creating content and reviews and stuff. But it's not quite the same as having that and having actual for pay businesses like journalists actually doing it professionally. There's just more money to be had if a person can toe the line. I think YouTube making their rules, I think there's a consequence to YouTube making their rules that transparent, because now everybody would have to follow. People would know exactly what they would have to do. And they wouldn't either try to game the system or, I don't know, it's like there's a downside to making things transparent.